All right, it is recorded. I'm going to share my screen. Is that big enough for everybody, hopefully? You could give me a thumbs up by using the information, whatever it's called, in Zoom. Thumbs up. Thank you, Megan. I appreciate it. So this webinar is called April 2021, Preparing the Newbies. Basically, I'm hoping to describe everything that everything that you will learn about therapy travelers from therapy travelers. My name is Margaret Curley. I am Therapy Travelers Clinical Manager. I've been working at an SLP for 20 years and as a teletherapist for 7 years. I live in New York. For the past 7 years, I've had 7 state licenses, which is easier than anyone thinks it is. Everybody thinks it's a difficult process, but it really isn't. I have worked mostly on the West Coast, but I've also worked in areas of Maine and Vermont and upstate New York. And this webinar is for all the new recruiters that might be joining Therapy Travelers, the newly or soon to be graduated students, and any experienced teachers or clinicians that we have who are new to Therapy Travelers. We are working together as one big family, so this is a window into what each of us do in order to make Therapy Travelers a great company. So if you are graduating this spring or summer, it is my suggestion that you keep a folder or a computer folder for easy access of your resume and any licensing documentation and materials, because that's very important with every place that you want to work. Addresses, dates, you'll just be repeating that over and over. So to have a folder makes it very convenient. In California and lots of other places, you will be asked to do fingerprinting for school districts. So you have to make time in your calendar for fingerprinting. And then you have to think of things that you want to answer questions for, such as when can you start, what age range you are looking to work with, what age range you are most familiar with, whether you are most comfortable with regular education or special education. And then of course, for the newly graduated, you have to consider your CF supervision and all of that paperwork from ASHA. When you talk to a recruiter about joining the company, you should realize that some of the questions that we might ask just to get a better idea of who you are is things like what was your favorite class? My question I always ask anybody who is joining is, did you learn anything from your university about remote teaching? Because it is a growing area that I think will continue to grow even after the pandemic is over. I would like to know how tech savvy you are. And then describe what you like about your new profession. You know, describe a student from your clinic, or describe one of your best sessions, one of your worst sessions. All of this gives us some insight into who you are. You should also consider things like how to handle, I call it discipline issues, but every student has a different personality. Some are shy, some are overly chit-chatty, some are, um, what's the right word? Um, Troublemakers. And you have to play the scenarios in your head as to how you would handle those situations. And then most of all, as you have to with all of your sessions, every new student, every new school year is, what is your plan to gain their trust, to gain rapport? Because if you are a speech teacher, or if you're an occupational therapist, a special ed teacher, in order for them to learn from you, they have to want to learn from you. They have to want to trust you. So gaining rapport is top of the list, number one. Something to think about when you are joining a company like Therapy Travelers versus applying to a school directly is, what are the benefits of joining our agency? I like it because when I was working for most of my career, after 20 years, I got a little stale. It wasn't that I wasn't good at my job, but I wanted something interesting. And the best thing about speech or education is that you can look around and always learn something new. So the learning potential at Therapy Travelers is exponential. You can change the grades that you work with. You could change the population. If you are not settled in one place, you have the ability to move around. If you are an international student and are still here after graduation, you can join because you're not yet settled in one place. And then there's other things to take into consideration, like salary and how many hours you want to work, whether you want a work-life balance. All of these things are things that we at Therapy Travelers can provide. The next thing that we're going to discuss is Therapy Travelers hires staff for full-time remote work, especially now during the pandemic. There are some states that are going back hybrid, like in New York with my children. My children were doing 2 days on Zoom and 2 days face-to-face. And then there are some school districts that are returning back to school full-time. So the truth of the matter is, it doesn't matter what service model you do, whether you're doing remote learning or whether you're doing face-to-face, is the materials really are the same. How you teach is the same. It's just that some of the materials will be the same and some of the materials will be different. There's an article lower in the slide that is called "Will Schools Be Back to Normal This Fall?" Kind of, sort of. It's from the Washington Post. So if you want to click on the link, it will, it'll say basically every state is different. One of the things about working as a remote teacher, as I have, is every state is different. Every school district is different. Sometimes every school within the school district is different because of the principals, because of the administration. So you have to be flexible. And I think everybody has learned a whole lot of flexibility in this past year. So congratulations for surviving this past year. So let's move on to what you need to know about working in a school. First and foremost, every student on your caseload has an individual educational plan. I'm going to open up the chat because I want to see, does everybody know what an IEP is? Click on the chat box and just let me know, because if you don't know, I'll go into more detail. Fantastic. Yes, 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 yes. Awesome. All right. So I don't have to explain what the IEP is. So then after the IEP, then comes your responsibilities as a therapist. Doesn't matter whether you're a speech therapist, an occupational therapist, a special ed teacher. These are the responsibilities. First, you have to set up your weekly schedule, which is hard to do at the beginning of every school year, but eventually you get through it. You also have to think about how to set up a well-paced therapy session. Most therapy sessions in schools are about 30 minutes long. So how many materials should you have ready for that 30-minute session? Later on in the presentation, I will show you how I do what I'd like to think is a well-paced therapy session. During those therapy sessions, you have to always keep in mind how to provide your students with tricks and modifications. You will encounter students whose reading skills are not at grade level. So what can you do to help them when their reading is not at grade level to understand their reading assignments in order to answer WH questions or answer other questions? So providing tricks, modifications, and accommodations is a big part of many of our students. Next comes, you have to record your daily logs. All of the school districts that I have worked for have a website that provide me an area where I do SOAP notes or daily log notes. My suggestion is stay up on recording these daily logs. I record them first when I start my session, and then I complete them at the end of the session. So when all of my students come to my speech session, I say, okay, hold it everybody, let me take attendance. They're used to having attendance in the regular gen ed classroom, so it's a great time to call it attendance and take attendance in your speech session. But we know it's just writing down daily logs. The next is consulting with teachers and family on an as-needed basis. The next is attending the IEP meetings, and in all of the schools that I have worked at, the special ed teacher can be the lead of the IEP meetings, and many of the speech teachers are the leads of the IEP meetings. So that means that you're responsible for the paperwork and doing the invitations and preparing for the meetings. So how do you do all of these things responsibly? My suggestion is work as a team. Find friends and resources and share them with one another. And then the other thing is take time out and learn the platforms, because the better you know how to navigate whatever platform, whether it is the daily log platform, whether it is the IEP website platform, whether it is Google Classroom because you're working remotely, the more you understand it, the easier it is to do your job. So the next couple of slides are a day in the life. We're on slide 7 for anyone who's interested. A day in the life. So you arrive at school, give or take 7:30. If you're working with high school students, it's earlier. What I used to do is I checked my email. Some of my school districts had IEPs in the morning because that's what time the teachers were available and the parents were available. They could go to work a little later, half hour later, or maybe an hour later. So we had good attendance in early morning IEP meetings. Then every day I prep for my student lessons. I either have group lessons up to 4 students. I have individual lessons for those students who need more support. And then I have push-in lessons to classrooms. A quick half-hour lunch, more therapy sessions, more IEPs in the afternoon, and before you blink, your day is over. The days go really fast. So the next slide is about the real life of being a school clinician or special ed teacher. I have mostly group sessions. I group them according to grade. They are not grouped according to what their goals are. So I will have both articulation and language students in the same grade and in the same session. And later on in the presentation, I'll talk about how I address both of those goals at the same time. When you're working with lower elementary students, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, there's a lot more articulation goals. As you move towards third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, then it kind of flip-flops. Articulation starts to fall away, and you'll have the stubborn articulation students, I call them, like the R sound. There's still some students who receive speech therapy for R sound. There's still some students who have stubborn handwriting goals in third, fourth, fifth grade. And then there's language analysis. And as I say in the slide, language analysis and answering WH questions and understanding passages, grade level passages, often go hand in hand with reading struggles. So that's when I work very closely with the classroom teacher and the reading resource teacher. If you've been assigned to a junior high or high school, mostly it's language-based goals, and then the special ed students. In junior high and high school, again, it's individual, push-in, and some groups. So like I said before, how to be successful in running your day-to-day activities. Don't do it alone. Find people, find friends in the school, look for mentors who have been doing this for longer years. If you're therapy travelers, reach out to me. I have plenty of resources that I love to share. Especially at Therapy Travelers, we are here to help, especially if you are working remotely. And then I have some great suggestions on how to use templates and automate your paperwork. Make sure you work tightly with classroom teachers because their materials are grade-based. So their vocabulary, I use their vocabulary for articulation. I use their spelling lists for articulation. And then the last thing is learn the technology. So we talked about a day in the life. So now this is a week in the life of a teacher and a clinician. I would say the average caseload is 50 or more students, which means that there are 50 IEPs every year, which means that that translates to about 4 IEP meetings a month. This month of April, for whatever reason, is a high month for me to do IEPs because May and June, There are less IEPs because we're winding down this year in order to ramp up for the 21-22 school year. On a weekly basis on your calendar, you should have your therapy schedule. You should have your IEP meeting schedule. And then there's always the new things that happen. Teachers will send you emails saying, can you look at this child? I think, I'm having a hard time understanding them. Can you look at their pronunciation or articulation? And then there's always the students on your caseload who are meeting their goals now. So they might be ready for discharge. They were once seen twice a week, 30-minute session. So maybe at the next IEP meeting, they go down to one time a week or every other week. Right before they're discharged, it's usually on a consultant basis, which means that you check in with the teacher and the student once a month to make sure that they are still doing what they were doing so well in speech class doing. Is there carryover? And then lastly is a day in the life on a monthly basis. The thing to be the best case manager for IEPs is to be efficient in the paperwork. I check it every week for 2 weeks ahead to make sure that I have my paperwork ready, that I have my invitations ready for the parents. I have the invitations ready for the school team that has to be by law attending the IEP meetings. And then on a month-to-month basis, August and September is a lot of time is devoted to scheduling, getting to know the students, learning the new goals. Then before you blink, it's Thanksgiving and winter break time and the first report card. There's more report cards in March. If you work with older students, then there is the, I forget what it's called, but they are graduating from 6th grade into high school or junior high school. So there is a transfer meeting that I am a participant in right now with a lot of my students. And then June report cards and extended school year summer school. All right, the third part is talking about actually teaching in our lessons, in our sessions. So the first one is teaching in school face-to-face, and hopefully come August and September across the country, the majority of our school districts will have at least some face-to-face time, if not a lot of face-to-face time. I'm hoping. Cross your fingers. So you start your sessions by introductions, getting to know the students. I talked about rapport. I talked about reviewing the goals. I like to observe them in the classroom to see how they participate, how they function. Does the teacher understand the students? Are they distracted? Can they follow the rules? All of that is good information. When I call my students into my therapy session for the first 2 weeks, I teach the school rules and the speech rules. Simple things like taking turns, whole body listening, and I also talk about rewards. If we do all of our work, I promise we will do something fun. That's not to say that our work is not fun, but our work works on our goals and our fun is the reward at the end. I also talk to the students about, do you know what your goal is? I have a lot of students who, when I ask them that question, they say, I think I work on R, or they say things like, well, I play games. Not in my session. I talk about their goals all the time. I want them to know why they're coming to me. If they're working on sentences and grammar and nouns, irregular plurals, irregular past tense, I want them to know what their goals are. Also, within the first 2 or 3 weeks, I do a baseline quiz so that I know where they are performing in their goals. And then the last one is I'm just gathering data. I want to know what their behaviors are like, what their personalities are like. Where can I help them with those tips and tricks? The next one is teaching online, which I said at the beginning, I've been doing for the past 7 years. I love remote teaching, but it's a little different. A lot of it is the same. Some of it is different. First and foremost is if you have a good connection, then that makes or breaks a session. If you have bad tech issues or you have bad Wi-Fi, it breaks the flow and it breaks the trust and it breaks the excitement of the therapy session with the students. It doesn't matter whether they're kindergarten or whether they're in 11th grade. Excuse me. In fact, middle school and high schoolers are a little less tolerant. So therefore, your technology has to be really good. And if you're not familiar with the technology, then my suggestion is practice with friends and family first. Think about where you are. I am in clearly the smallest office that's ever been built, but I hope that it is well lit so that the students see my face and I can see theirs. When you're working on articulation, I want to make sure that they see my mouth clearly because I'm going to be pointing to my mouth when I want them to do a TH sound, or when I want them to see the difference between an F sound. There's more gesturing when I'm online. So at the beginning of online sessions, it's the same thing. You gain rapport, you review the goals, but you have to also find out and teach the basics of your computer platform. Do they know how to use a mouse? Do they only use touch screens? These are all important things to know. You have to talk about being a good digital citizen, raising your hand, using the thumbs up, not clicking into another tab, and being distracted. When a student is in another tab and you ask them a question, you have to make sure that they know that they're being caught. Are you in my tab? The one thing about the Google Slides is you can see when somebody is clicking on a different slide. Not right now, because the tabs, the slides that I share with my students are set up differently. So I can see where my students are on my slides. And then lastly is speak clearly. Like I said, look directly at the camera, and hand gestures are really important. You're not there in person, but that doesn't mean that you can't make it fun and reward them. We do the wave sometimes, we do the dab. I know that's old, old fashioned. We do high fives in the camera. We do give a clap for the student who did a good job in answering the question or is working hard on their letter sounds. So it's working together as a team and making sure that they have fun. So just like I said, what do you need? Good internet. I wear headphones because I want to hear the speech sounds of my Artic students, and to be in a quiet area. Remember that these therapy sessions are legally binding. So I have never done speech therapy in a Starbucks, or I've never done it in anything public. I keep it in my private home, in a private section. So when I talked about earlier about how to pace therapy sessions, my typical pace is I will show my students a video or a song. I will share a worksheet that we work on together. And then since we're on the computer and learning remotely, I have a list of websites that have all different educational games. Like at the top, I have a balloon pronoun game. I have a preposition game. I have, for those who are working on grammar, I have unscramble the sentences. For the older students, I have figurative language games. And then I also have my go-to all the time is called Z Library. And this is where I can find any workbook that is grade level language reading and analysis. So it's one of my favorites. I use it every day. It's called Z Library. So after a video of teaching or myself teaching a concept, doing a worksheet, then we play a game that's based on the concept that I'm trying to teach. Everybody always asks me, where do I find materials? Well, I've been doing this a while and I spend a lot of time, probably too much time, looking for materials, but there is a ton of free content online, and I will start sharing all of my resources in Margaret's Corner on Therapy Travelers. But if you want, what I have done in the past is, if anybody is quick to the screenshot, you can always take a screenshot of my educational websites that I have right here. Room Recess is one of my favorites. Turtle Diary is another good one. I'll click on over to Articulation. These are some of my favorite websites. And then if you don't get to it, you could always message me in Margaret's Corner. The other thing that I use is, like I said, I work closely with the classroom teachers. And right now, everybody at my school uses Google Classroom, but there's other online educational companies. And I am a co-teacher in the regular ed classrooms, so I get to see what materials they are working on and what homework is assigned to them. So like I said, if they're given a spelling list assignment, I will use that. If they have a reading assignment, I will review it with the students to make sure that they got all the answers correct and that they understood the answers. I'll even use the sentences to talk about grammar. So the next page is talking about paper or computers. And it's my opinion that moving forward, the schools are going to use both. And I love this quote from a teacher. I saw this in an article the other day that I just cut and pasted in here. And she said, I've learned to create Google slide presentations. The students can work together, which is exactly what I do during my lessons. I can see them work instantly at the same time that it's on the screen. And when we return back to brick and mortar, you can mix both paper and the computers. And the reason why I believe that we should always use computers these days, whether it's a, whether it's a laptop or whether it's a tablet. And the reason is that the students in school now, ages 6 to 18, Gen Zers, have not seen the world without technology. So it's only going to get more and more and more. So therefore, I believe that technology has to be used. And I use it with every age. I use it starting in pre-K, and here's a website. It's called Owly, and I work on language enrichment while working on computer skills. And when I'm working on computers with my pre-K and kindergartners, it is so important that the parents participate, because they're really, the parents are learning something as much as the students are, because I only provide services twice a week. And that doesn't matter whether it's, again, speech or OT. We're only there 2 times 30, but the parents are with them all the time. So if the parents learn something, or if the parents find a website that the student likes, then they will do it together while learning at the same time. My older students use either Jamboard or this Google slide presentation. And then my older students, they're older, they're savvier. Sometimes a lot of times they know more computer skills than I do. But I want them to know the tricks and tips for educational computer skills. So therefore, I talk a lot about the computer tools. So if you have a reader who is not reading at grade level, this purple monster is a add-on extension, and it's called Screenshot Reader. So my students will hover over some text and it'll read it out loud to them. So as they read it, it will read it to them. And then when they answer questions, they'll have a better chance of being able to answer the question than if they were independently reading it on their own and they were struggling with decoding words. I use Google Translate a lot, not just with my bilingual families, but in fact, I use it a lot when I'm sending emails to my bilingual families, but I also use it because underneath, when you type something in, it works as a dictionary as well. There's another one called pronounce.google, which is an articulation practice. It's not a website, it's a, guess it's a website. But as you can see here, you can watch you can watch Google's mouth in pronouncing it. You can slow it down and you can practice how it says, and they will interpret how you said it and they will correct you in how you say it. One of the smartest things was one of my 6th grade students uses Hey Google or uses Siri to help him with his homework. he promises he doesn't use it to get answers to his math homework. We made sure to ask him that question. But when he's from a bilingual family, so if he doesn't know what a word means or how to spell it, he asks his little disc, "Hey Google." Genius. I'm telling you, they're geniuses. And like I said about rewards, my rewards are not only just games or videos, because I try and build that into my therapy session, but it's also just fun shout outs. You know, when somebody has done all of their work, we do a cheer for them. You know, give me an M, give me an A, give me a G. What does that spell? Maggie. And then we all say, great job, Maggie. I can see that you're working hard on your R sound. Or I see that you read that and you answered that question perfectly. So it's just always just trying to keep things fun. And then when you're talking about middle school and high school students, it's a little bit of reward, and it's a little bit of, okay, if you do it, we'll play one of your videos, or I'll answer one of your questions. These are some of the websites that I have in my favorites. So you could Google these. These are pretty great. I have the do's and don'ts. If you are starting out as a new teacher, take a big calming breath. I know it's overwhelming. I know what you learned in school is not all what's going to translate into working your 8-to-3 job, but there's a lot of support, and you have to be confident to ask questions and to find your support system. So practice with your families, learn your students' goals and their mandate, try to meet their educational needs, always thinks about the tips and tricks, which is another word for equity and accessibility. Keep up with your paperwork. IEPs, I do a month ahead. Logs, I do same day. I automate it. I use templates. Use the technology, and then know that you will encounter questions and problems, but old experienced people like me are here to help. The don'ts. Don't think there's only one way to teach, because I have some speech teachers who use a lot of teachers pay teachers or a lot of boom cards. And as long as the student meets their goals, it doesn't matter how you get there. Just one little caution about boom cards and teachers pay teachers. It is a great resource, but I find that it is not always curriculum based, that it's a little too general. It doesn't follow the Common Core guidelines. So I would rather ask a teacher for some of their homeworks and assignments before I would pay money for teachers pay teachers or boom cards. Don't think that the student isn't up to using technology, because even 2-year-olds know how to use a tablet and a cell phone these days. So anything that you have with technology for any student, there are some who it doesn't work great with, but I say try it with everybody. Don't think videos and games are the reward for learning, because as I showed you, I have a lot of websites that are educational games that are fun for the kids, and it's rewarding while you're playing. I think it's called gamification. Don't reinvent the wheel unless you want to. I look for resources before I think that I have to make one myself. And I keep on saying it over and over and over again. don't do it alone. So, what do we at Therapy Travelers need to help you succeed? I have done several webinars that are on the Therapy Travelers website, but I'm always looking for more ideas. So do you want to share with me? You could put it in the chat box if you have any ideas as to what you think that you want more information of. Some of the things that I put down, obviously, learning more about evaluations, whether it's online evaluations, more practice with giving tests, more professional development, and then providing clinical support or tech support. Just to let you know that we do have a certificate for today. So if you send an email, I will customize it with your name. And then this is the end of the presentation. If you have any questions, you can either unmute yourself or you can put it in the chat box, and I'll see if I can answer the questions for you. And as Therapy Travelers always says, work hard and be kind. Thanks everybody for joining. I hope it was helpful information. And if you want a PDF of this, it will be up on the website as well.
Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you very much. Have a nice evening.
You too. It was a pleasure.
Bye.
You're awesome, Margaret. Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. Good job. I learned a lot.
Thank you, everyone.